Okay, we are live, Monte. I think we're good.
Thank you. Thank you. So good evening, venerable monks, and I don't see any nuns and Dhamma friends. Thank you for being here with us today on our 50th Zoom Sutra discussion. So we have done about 50 of these so far. Bhante Sarnapala is not here in Canada, in North America this time. He's visiting his family, relatives, and teachers in Bangladesh. So today for this discussion, we have many monks who have joined from different parts of the world. I'll start with Venerable Bhante Kamalasiri, who is joining us from Minnesota. And then we have Venerable Bhante Jinananda joining us from Ottawa. And we have Bhante Santa Sobhana joining us from Los Angeles. And we have Venerable Jayasara. I'm not sure where Bhante is joining from, New Jersey?
Maryland right now.
Maryland. Yeah. And then we have Venerable Kaluboila Ananda Bhante joining from Cambridge, Canada. And we have Bhante Sarnapala joining from Vancouver, I believe. And then we have Bhante Tesala joining from Sri Lanka. What part of Sri Lanka, Bhante?
Terusanai Bhante, I am from Northern Province, Bhante.
Northern Province of Sri Lanka. So welcome all the venerable Bhantes to this 50th Zoom Sutra discussion. So today we will be discussing the Sallekha Sutta. So before we begin that, let us pay homage to the Buddha by joining our palms together. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. I pay homage to the Buddha, to the enlightened one, to the perfectly awakened Supreme Buddha. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So today's Sutta discussion is on Majjhima Nikaya number 8, Sallekha Sutta, and I'd like to open it for discussion. And maybe one of the venerables here can give us an introduction to the Sutta. Let's see who likes to jump in. Maybe also with the question, what is Sallekha? And understanding this term and maybe exploring its significance. It looks like Bhante Jinananda is willing to give us a little start.
Greetings to all venerable and our Dhamma friends in this Zoom Sutta platform. First of all, I would like to express my sincere happiness and joy because Bhante Sarnapala and few other monks, including myself, started this discussion, I think nearly more than a year ago, to converse ourselves on the Dhamma, to enrich our mind, at the same time help people from different backgrounds. At the beginning of this discussion, we thought that it would be beneficial for young monks back from Sri Lanka and elsewhere in Asia and people who join with us from different part of the world would, really get into Dhamma by listening to main points of the Buddha's teaching. And it works well. Like, I think many monks who join, and also those who participate in the discussion at the time the discussion went on and later, they really enjoyed. So my sincere appreciation goes to Bhante Sannapala and all the venerable monks and nuns who participate in the discussion, and also Dhamma friends who contributed a lot by participating. So having said that, I just want to begin by saying that this is one of the greater discourse. Bhante Kusala informed me earlier that whether I could go with the summary of the discourse, but it was not a good occasion for me to go because of some programs. See, anyway, I think before I opened, unmuted, Venerable Ananda raised his hand. So let him speak about the word, Sallekha or effacement. I really like to talk about the brief structure of the sutta as Bhante Kusala, opened the floor for us. Actually, this is one of the greatest suttas for all of us to bring our attention to the Dhamma. The reason why I say this, because there are very nice statement of the Buddha about the kusala and about what we need to do in a practical sense. The sutta is recorded in Majjhima Nikaya in the first section. Sutta number is 8, Sallekha Sutta. The characters of the discourse is the Buddha and also Venerable Mahachunda. And it is said that the Buddha, had a discussion with Venerable Mahachunda, and then Venerable Mahachunda asked the question, which is very important for us. He said, Venerable Sir, various views arise in the world associated either with doctrines of self or with a doctrine about the world. Now, does the abandoning and relinquishing of those views come about in a bhikkhu who is attending only to beginning of his meditative training? I am reading the translation done by Bhikkhu Bodhi, and there are other translation done by Bhikkhu Kanisaro, I believe, and also Sudaso and Sujato, Venerable Sujato. So they are very good translations. So what does this mean? The statement of Venerable Chunda is saying that there are many views, many concepts, many things in human's mind. So if there, how does these views are abandoned by a bhikkhu? Does the bhikkhu who practice jhana or samadhi can do that? Then the Buddha came with a very beautiful answer, and it summarizes the whole sutta in my understanding. The Buddha said that those views are all associated with the 5 skandhas, 5 aggregates of clinging. This is what the Buddha said in his words. Chunda, as to those various views that arise in the world associated with either with doctrine of self or with doctrine about the world, if the object in relations to which those views arise, which they underlie and which they are exercised upon, is seen as it actually is with proper wisdom, thus, this is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself, then the abandoning and relinquishing of those views come about. So, friends, with regard to views, we talk about the 5 aggregates of clinging. In other words, upadana, the word upadana towards 5 skandhas, namely form, feeling, perception, mental formation, and consciousness, is a view, is a kind of point of view. Our ideas are always produced in 6 senses, or with regard to those rupa, and also other skandha. So if we are able to reflect in or yoniso manasikar in a right way, this is how we do it. This is not mine. This I am not. This is not myself. Netang mama, nemeso amasmi, nemeso attati. So if we are able to put this right reflection on any views, that is the way one abandon all the negative views, all the views. So that is what the Buddha mentioned in the introductory part. And then the Buddha was going to explain that these attainment, what we call jhana, are not for pulling out those views completely, but they are for temporary happiness. The very word the Buddha used there is pleasant abiding here and now. The Buddha talks about 8 kinds of attainment, as many of you know. For those 4 jhana, as mentioned in the Samma Samadhi, in the Noble Eightfold Path. And the other 4 jhanas are called immaterial jhana, namely the sphere of space and consciousness and nothingness and neither perception nor non-perception. I'm not going to tell those Pali terms because they are not that familiar to many people here. So these are the 8 attainments the Buddha talks about there, and they are all, particularly the first 4 are called pleasant abiding here and now. In other words, when you practice jhana, you of course do it by abandoning 5 hindrances. It's for temporary period of time, and there is so much joy and pleasure and happiness over there, but it's not for abandoning abandoning those views. In other words, jhana could be a profound place or mental state for someone to do vipassana, to pull out all the negative things, but jhana themselves are not doing that. That's what the Buddha mean here. Then the 4 arupa jhana or immaterial jhana are for the same purpose, but the way the Buddha explained them in the Pali text is different. So they are called peaceful abiding in the noble one's discipline. So the same thing explained in a different way, but for me, if we take in a simple word, they are all for happiness right now. After that, the Buddha talks about 44 ways of abandoning, unwholesome states, not only those views, but all the unwholesome activities are mentioned here, starting with others will be cruel and we shall not be cruel here. So one should have this strong thought in mind. So in other words, it is a kind of great determination that while others become cruel, I'm not going to be. And there you see that when others kill living beings, I abandon this killing living beings and practice compassion. Those are included into these 44 ways of abandoning unwholesomeness. Having said that, we come to the middle of the sutta, and it's all about how we think about the kusala. Actually, this is a very nice and very important statement in the sutta. It is said that I say that even the inclination of mind towards wholesome state is of great benefit. It means that even having a kusala chitta, skillful thoughts in mind, is great. And how about if we talk about applying this kusala chitta in words and action? The power and the energy we get is immeasurable. So that would again talk about these 44 ways of effacement there, Sallekha, and it's all about kusala. And then next, in the next part, Buddha talks about avoidance. Suppose there were an uneven path and another even path by which to avoid it. So when we have unwholesome state, we should think that there is a wholesome way to overcome the unwholesomeness. So, for example, killing living beings could be avoided by practicing loving kindness. So replacement is always there in the teaching, so that those people who have been in unwholesome states, unwholesome actions and words for a long time should not be so upset, because you can begin the training right now by replacing wholesome thoughts. So the kind of replacement is talking about there with regard to the 44 ways. And then again, we see the way how one should uplift their life. Chunda, just as all unwholesome state lead to downwards and all wholesome state lead to upwards. They are very clear statement. And when one become cruel, it is the akusala, it is the unskillfulness, and the destiny of those people who do akusala is unhappy state, while those people do kusala, go to happy state. So at last, Buddha talk about the total extinguishing of unwholesome state, including the views. So and then the conclusion is really nice too. So the Buddha said that as the teacher, I have done my duty. So there is nothing to be done anymore, so that it is our duty. It means bhikkhus and bhikkhunis and upasaka and upasika, lay followers should know what to do. So the Buddha is showing us the whole teaching in this particular sutta, Sallekha Sutta in Majjhima Nikaya. And at last he requests us to be isolated and search through search through the teaching of the Buddha in us by by practicing meditation by every means. So that is the type of summary of the sutta. I know that I miss certain important things, because when you give a summary, it's happened. But I know that these great monks will dive into those important points and bring the sutta in a nice way for our audience. Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Venerable Bhante Jinananda, for this wonderful introduction. You have really uncovered the aspects of the sutta, and I know that this is a very lengthy discourse. I think starting from where it starts, basically Venerable Mahachunda visits the Buddha, and possibly with his own students. Mahachunda, as an awakened monk already, as an arahant, had his students with him, and I think there might have been a discussion about self-view and some sort of understanding about this term, very term Sallekha. And I think the Buddha has adapted it and then started giving this new meaning. And I think my point now is to see what Sallekha actually is. From what I have gathered so far, there is this Pali word, Sallekha, and it comes from Sang Likhati. So Likhati has this meaning of scratching off, removing, eliminating. So this significant term is translated as self-effacement, which is not a common English word. And then Bhante Sudaso has translated it as humility by saying effacement does not make any sense. So humility is the word choice he made. So how and why these choices have been made, and perhaps maybe we can continue the discussion thinking the significance of this sutra. I know I have heard that, although I have not done it personally, I have done it several times with, when I was traveling with other venerable monks and nuns, that they chant the part that Bhante Jinananda highlighted about others will be cruel and we will not be cruel. This is being chanted in monasteries in English. So that way, it's a great reminder for all of us, when we chant, sometimes, we have a set of sutras that we chant, but oftentimes we ignore some sutras as sutras that are not chant worthy or are not sutras that we chant. So Sallekha Sutta has somehow landed in the as a book, as a sutra that can be chanted, especially starting from number 1 to number 44, where it says, what others will do and what we will do. So with that, it has to be highlighted here that discussing these and chanting these, and also seeing how the Buddha initially says the first 4 jhanas and also the next 4 attainments are not Sallekha. And perhaps we can also discuss these points of the Buddha and then see what actually Sallekha is, starting from that first teaching. So that's the core of the teaching, these 44 ways of arriving at mental purity, self-purity. And that first one is others can be cruel and we will always not be cruel. So this is saying that the teachings of the Buddha is based in ahimsa and not harming any being. So I think with these points, we can also continue the discussion. I saw Venerable Bhante Ananda has raised his hand, and over to you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante. Thirwan Saranai. And again, all the best wishes for the 50th program. And I wish that we would see the 50th, after the 50th, the 100th, 105th, and so on. And also, I would like to take this opportunity that I heard that there was this major catastrophe today at Turkey and Syria. And I wish all the beings who have departed and people who are in pain, that they may relieve from their worldly and physical pains. So starting off, Bhante, like Bhante Jinananda mentioned, it's a very long discourse. And the first thought I had was, is 1 hour enough to, or 1.5 hours enough to finish this whole sutta? But maybe we can use it as a foundation and we can break it down into a few pieces. So I think the first part is, in the first part, it says the entry point to that, which is around different conclusions people could believe in. So it sort of addresses of the belief system of people. And Attavada or Lokavada, which means what do you think of where I am coming from in a previous reincarnation or a birth, or where I'm going to. So most of that could be found in suttas like Brahmajala Sutra. But even if we try to sort of decode what are these different conclusions about myself or ego or about the world, I think you need to again go back to the Vedic tradition or the Upanishad traditions, because those are the traditions which explains what are these different arguments, different schools of thought where people had about who am I? The Vedic school or the dualistic school says one thing, and then there's the non-dualistic school like Advaita Vedanta, they say something else. And there are so many Upanishad schools of thought which had different views of who am I, or what I'm made of, and what is the world like. And then in Brahmajala Sutra, for example, Buddha says there's 62 ways of such conclusions people could have. And then stemming from there, I think it's very interesting when we come to this sutra, Sallekha Sutra, we find Mahachunda Thero being involved in another such sutra, the Mahachunda Sutra. I hope that it's the same Mahachunda Thero that who appears in this sutra and Sallekha and Mahachunda Sutra. But in both sutras, there's this argument, which one is the better way? Is it the path of jhana or meditation, or is there a different path which is not jhana? And I think I'm just assuming there probably was this rivalry where there was a people who are a lot into meditation, and they have excelled in different jhanas, the levels of jhanas from first to fourth, the rupa jhanas and the arupa jhanas. So I'm sure that it was a time where people have done a lot of hardcore meditation, and they were really in these different levels or states of mind. And there was a major sort of an argument between some people who thought this was enlightenment versus this is not enlightenment. So entering to the sutta, it says that some people could wrongly or misidentify their state of mind as an enlightenment, but which is not really enlightenment. And that is very true, Bante, because me getting into this whole meditation part, I have personal experiences, and where I thought I was enlightened, because when you meditate and when your mind gets into a very low vibe, you don't get any negative thought into your mind. No greed, no desire, no bad or a rough feeling. So you think that you have become so pure. And I remember I actually know a couple of few monks, that handful of monks, who really thought that they were enlightened, but it was a time test. After some time, they figured that it's not the case. It's just it was a jhanic level. In fact, I have a friend who told, he said that he managed to get into a arupa jhana, and for an entire year he did not even get a desirous thought about the opposite sex or the feelings of sexual conduct. He did not get that feeling for an entire year and a half. And the next part is that I think meditation can be quite addictive. It could be addictive as a drug. This evening, another friend called me. He has started meditation, and then he has so got into that meditative practice. He sometimes want to stop in the middle of the day while he's working and then meditate. So it can be a very addictive thing. And I think Sallekha Sutta sort of goes against another sutra, Gavi Upama Sutra. Gavi Upama Sutra promotes meditation. It says going into these different states of mind or jhana is a good thing. But on the other hand, you find Sallekha Sutta saying, well, you can go into that, but there's a trap. There's a trap that you can get into, and you might wrongfully identify that you are enlightened, but it's not that you're really identified. You still have these other things which you need to Sallekha. Now I used purposely the word Sallekha because the meaning of what Sallekha exactly is can be a huge topic itself. Ludwig Wittgenstein said that communication is something like I have a picture in my mind and I have to create the same picture in front of everyone who's in front of me. That is my language. So by that definition, just explaining something with the word Sallekha could be really difficult. So Sallekha, again, a very uncommon word, effacement is used here, and humility is used here. I sort of don't fully agree to both these two words, but I would prefer something like erasing or elimination or scratching off. But even if you use the scratching off or elimination word, that's again, we get into another sort of a two-way approach. So some people believe that your raga, dvesha, moha, your delusion, your hatred, and your desire, you can depreciate it like you depreciate your tires over a time, over a period of austerity. You depreciate that those qualities in your mind. So that's one approach. So scratching off or erasing means that you have written something and then you're going to erase that. But then there's this other whole approach where there's nothing to be erased. To begin with, there was nothing, but you have completely wrongfully identified that. There was nothing, but then you have wrongfully thought there is something, and the identification of your wrongful thought itself is the Sallekha. So again, it's a whole big discussion that we can get into, but I just wanted to point out that the word Sallekha, or what we call as Sallekha, can be a very big topic itself. But I also see that this sutta goes into 44 such derivative parts that Buddha has offered to Sallekha. And there's Sallekha, Chittuppada, Parikkamana, Uparibhava, and Parinibbana. I will not get into the 44 or the different parts, but what we can see is that first we identify that Buddha says about wrongful conclusions or drushtivada. And then the second part, that you can get into a state of mind and think that you are enlightened. And that could be a wrongful identification of your enlightenment. And then the third part, which has 5 main approaches, 44 derivatives within that 5 approaches and say, this is Sallekha and the previous are not. So that's what I think in this sutta. I think we'll have to discuss a lot to figure out the real meaning of this sutta. So that's what I think, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante Anand, for this marvelous entry, explaining what Sallekha is and also how difficult it is to really uncover the points in this sutra. I see you have also tried to explain what Sallekha is, and I have suggested different titles for the sutra. I totally agree, and I wish English title like Effacement wasn't there, and they used something different, more straightforward language. But here we are, and I think we will hear from other venerables and see what we learn from them. I think Venerable Santasovan has raised his hand, and we will hear from him, and then we will move to Venerable Bhante Kamalsiri.
Thank you very much, Venerable Sirs. And at the same time, I give my sincere gratitude to all the Venerable monks and our most Venerable Saranapala Thero, and wish you all the best for this program, because it is 50th program and it is not easy to continue like this. And I really appreciate giving me this opportunity. So when it comes to this sutta, I like to open a different window for all our listeners. Sallekha, one meaning of this Sallekha means is kind of like a breaking down to pieces, or another way is kind of like uprooting the view. So why it happened like this way? Because according to the sutta and also according to the English title that gave today, that what is the meaning of spiritual development, spiritual practice. So why we have to do it, and because when it comes to our life, we all have to understand, we all experience this life right here like this because of we all are clinging to ourselves. And at the same time, regarding the self, people have different views. It can come from different forms. So it is a very important word, and at the same time, I really appreciate that our Venerable monks opened this discussion. When it comes to our life, we have to understand that there are few ways this life happening. So because according to the sutta, this mainly discuss about that why this self, from where this idea of self come. So when it comes to our day-to-day life, we have to understand the most of time that we into our spiritual life with lot of conception and fixations and ideology, and with lot of self views. And because of that, knowingly or unknowingly, sometimes most of our friends or the students or the followers or the listeners or the practitioners, most of time what happened in their spiritual practice, they have already designed a model for themselves, and they start to look for that. And they go through many practice, they go here and there, they go to many teachers, they go to and listening to many sutras, and they go to many monks or the many retreats, and they're traveling everywhere looking the model they carry inside their head. So then when it comes to spiritual practice, we have to understand, rather than looking for a method or the model, we have to have awareness to clean our mental view. So once we are capable to release or clean our mental view, and we are capable to understand how things come to be as they are, And as a result of that, you are capable to move forward and take a very conscious decision what to do and where to move. So the why I say that, because Nibbana or the liberation, we can't verbalize. We can't understand it by words. So then most of the time people say, oh, I want to attain to Nibbana. So what we mean by Nibbana? Because then we already have a mental format. And that is, if you have a mental format, you can't get into a Nibbana. So the meaning of spiritual practice means we have to get out of that all the mental views that we carry. And how we can do that? Because it can do. And we can fix this mind and we can understand this process. That's why the Buddhas come, and that's why the old enlightened masters and teach this. So how we can do that? So in the very first level, we have to understand how this life happened. So basically, there are three properties. One is the mental property. So that's mean all the mental formations or the cankers or the sanskaras we carry within us. And other properties, our physical property, our eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. Another property is this all the material. So when these three properties come together, we experience our reality. So that is our life. So when it comes together, we have to be very careful to look into our mental point of view. So that is what the here Sallekha means. Not regarding the outside properties or not regarding our physical properties, but in what kind of point of view we experience the life. So that, because when the self comes, what we mean by self, our body, our ideas, our concept, our feelings, and our name. So those are the things we bring as our self. So that all conditioned by us. So in case if the person capable to experience anything in the moment without holding that point of view related to our mind, that person capable to understand the very nature of a moment of experience. That very nature is change. If the person experience the change within the mental properties or the physical properties or the material properties, there is no clinging. So in that very moment, what happened, that person come out of that idea of self, and that purification will help that person to understand and what is this. Because otherwise, if we try to verbalize this experience, and we will never get into kind of like a solution. And the other thing is, as a start, so how, as example, for this all our listeners and the followers, and we know that out of this all these 15 programs, and there are a lot of lay people and a lot of students and a lot of listeners follow this program, and sometimes they can't get this sutra academically. So finally, how they can apply this sutra to their life and how they can purify themselves. As example, it like this, it's a one idea. There are many ideas. I hope that other venerable sirs will explain that. One idea. Most of time, we get into situations, reacting to situations because following other people. And when someone blame to us, sometimes we say, why you blame? Because he blame or she blame, that's why I blame. You know, why you hit? Oh, he hit to me, that's why I hit. So that's mean. It's most of time our counteraction go following as reactions to others. So, but when it comes to the very beginning of our spiritual purification or the build up our spiritual life, one of them, don't follow others and start to take a very conscious decision and following your awareness. Because most of time we do things, even our whole life, whole our spectrum regarding this world, built out of the schooling system, culture, or the tradition, or the believing. And most of time we do things because other people do. So, but here, if we do that way, what will happen? Our life also go like other people. But if anyone want to get out of this circle, start to tune into your awareness and develop your mindfulness. And once you develop the mindfulness, you are capable to understand yourself, how things come to be as they are, and follow that path. And that way, you are not going to follow the other people. You are not going to do things because other people do. And that will help them to start a new journey. So that new journey is the most beautiful moment as a human we can experience. Because the thing is this, that our reactions are kind of like our reactions to perception is our contribution to this world. So it is the greatest moment we have when we have opportunity to react to our perception. So if I take a very conscious decision, and if I react according to loving kindness, compassion, and the wisdom, and I am not bound to any tradition or the culture or the pattern or the method or any mental views. So if the person can do that, and that person always experience the newness, and out of that newness, and that person capable to get out of the mental formation. So seeing that our own mind and uprooting our mental views regarding our own experience is the finally, I mean, this Sallekha Sutta and the way to liberation, and another way is kind of like a purpose of spiritual practice. So that is my idea. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Venerable Bhante Santa Sobana, for this very insightful input to this discussion. The purpose of spiritual life. Thank you for reminding that also as the theme of the discussion. And you mentioned don't follow others and take responsibility to oneself and seriously see what needs to be done within, and that you mentioned the Sallekha Sutta being a great guide as we practice seeing our own flaws and reaching to the final Nibbana. So that's wonderful, and I'll come back to you after listening to what Bhante Kamalasiri has to offer. Over to you, Bhante.
Thank you for Bhante Kusala and everyone. I think who speak here, everybody try to explain about the sutra, and they went to deep and practical things and practical views. But again, I like to go to the beginning of the sutra because that is why I asked a few time for that. This word, the Sallekha, when we're going to understand some concepts in sutras, we need to understanding about the cultural background and philosophical background which was during the Buddha's period. Because without that understanding, it is very difficult to get some ideas. Within English sutra, English translations, we can see so many like that mistakes and misunderstanding about the sutras and the background. Here in Sallekha, it is Ayurvedic based word, and it was in a tradition of Sramanas, also in within different way. The Sallekha means surgery. Then the actual meaning of this word is the how to do surgery with klesa, to remove the klesa. How to remove klesa. That is the meaning how to remove the defilement. And this is in Jainism also. I think that is why Buddha used this word. That in Jainism, they use this Sallekha. They have different traditions and different way to do that. Finally, it was they said the fasting until to die. That is the Sallekha, they said. And then that person can attain to the Jiva Mukta, means the eternal goal, or the Nibbana or something, the freedom to attain. That was the latest Jainist concept for the Sallekha. But before that, they used this the dhyana as a technique of the Sallekha. That is why Buddha here explained there is no that words, but we can understand that the jhana is like put in a bandage, the temporary bandage in wound. Yeah, it is not the totally complete treatment. That words are there within the other way. It is only for this life and temporarily happiness or temporary treatment. But we need to remove completely, totally. Then if you want to do like that treatment, then we need this surgery to remove all of the defilement. In that way came this name, the Sallekha. I think if we get that idea, then easily we can understand what is the key point of this sutra and why Buddha explained that 43, I think 43 topics as a Sallekha. That is the thing I wanted to explain. Thank you for the listening and time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much, Bhante Kamalasri, for this very easy way to understand the sutra. Finally, we have a word that is very common, and when the moment you said surgery, I think everybody understood it. So, who is the surgeon? Who is the nurse? What are the tools? That's the question now. So let us see if other venerables have more ideas that they like to share. I like to hear from Bhante Pesala, who has been quiet so far, and we have about 40 minutes to go. And please, Bhante Pesala.
Thank you, Bhante, for giving me the chance, and may my vandana to all Bhantes actually enlighten us in a very beautiful way. And I'd like to contribute. And Bhante, especially this, first of all, I would like to, wish all the Sangha, because Sukha, as the Buddha said, Sukha Sangha Samaggi. So this unity of the Sangha, this is the 50th time. So this unity of Sangha may remain, as long as, by bringing the benefits of the humanity. I wish my all the best and infinite noble triple gem blessed to this unity of the Sangha. And by saying that, I would like to add, Bhante, this is also one of the best and sutra, because one of the enlightened being I really admire is the Venerable Mahachunda Thera. The most of the sutta Venerable Mahachunda address with the Buddha, he that Venerable Thero gave us so many valuable things as Dhamma factors. So in this sutta also, that Venerable enlightened Reverend Sir is giving lots of good information. So I went through the commentaries, Bhante, and it says about the background. There were some students of that Venerable Mahachunda Thera. They were achieving jhanas, first jhana, second jhana, and likewise up to the 8th. They were achieving jhana, and they were thinking that they were considering they were enlightened beings. So due to that, Venerable Mahachunda with them came to the Buddha and had that discussion, because at the time this discussion was going on with the Buddha. Venerable Mahachunda already enlightened, so he needs to because that the students monks, they were having some kind of wrong views in their minds, because they were having jhanas, they were experiencing blissfulness, and they were thinking that we are the ones who have achieved the Buddha's teachings, Buddha's targets, and things like that. But that at that time, by understanding their minds, the Buddha said, in this Buddha's teachings, jhana is not the matter. By achieving just jhana, we cannot efface our defilements. Actually, the beautiful meaning has given for the words Sallekha. It's kind of a we have already enlightened by our Venerable Theras. So we cannot rub off, or we cannot erase out our defilements by just having jhanas. So it is said that in the beginning, the Buddha said that. So before the sutra, there are two words very important to understand. So as bhikkhus or as followers, we are entering to the path by understanding the Four Noble Truths. That's why we need to understand the nature of the Trilakkana, Anicca, Dukkha, Anatta. So most people, without understanding this appearing and disappearing nature, or we call it appearing and disappearing, and another term for anicca means appearing and disappearing. So that's why we need to understand the five aggregates. When we understand the five aggregates, then we begin to see that the world it seems like world is continually existing, but actually it's happening like sudden, very quick and rapid appearances, and then at the same time disappearances are going on. So when we understand that nature, when we understand that five aggregate, then the world is mostly having two views. That is called the Attavada Patishanutta. Attavada means the doctrine of self. Most of the time, spiritual people, they were taught that there is a self. So without understanding the appearing and disappearing nature, they think there is a self, and they are trying to purify that self. So that is called Attavada Patishanutta. That view mostly having amongst the spiritual people. And the second one is the Lokavada Patishanutta. They tried to find like Sassataditi, that means the world, the external world is eternal. Is there they try to ask the question that is there an end of this universe? Is there no end of this universe? Is this universe eternal? Likewise, they were questioning about the external world. So that is called Lokavada Patishanutta. But when one understands the Four Noble Truths, all the views are fading away, because they begin to see the reality of the internal, spiritual, and also the external world. So that is what the beginning the Buddha mentioned about this doctrine of self and the doctrine of world. And thereby after that Buddha said, if when we contemplate on the five aggregates, they are anicca nature, or the appearing and disappearing. When we begin to show that there are three words, that etam mama. Most people having these views, they think etam mama, that means these things are mine. That view begins in our mind because of tanha. Tanha means craving. And some other things, eso hamasmi. Eso hamasmi means like this is me, this is I. So that wrong view coming because of mana. In English, it says conceit. And the other thing is, eso me attati, this is my soul. That defilement coming, that view comes in the mind because of the ditti. So we are having prominent defilements here, three defilements: tanha, ditti, mana. Tanha means craving, mana means the conceit, ditti means the view. So these views are the reasons to have those two types of doctrines, like doctrine of the self and doctrine of the world. So when we understand the about the five aggregates, we are having we are getting the way, we are getting the entrance to the Dhamma. So that means in another term, we can understand the, entering to the path is understanding of the Four Noble Truths. So the Buddha said, if one can know about the five aggregates, under Four Noble Truths, under first one, it is said, Sankittena Panchupadanakkhandha Dukkha. Concisely, if we can understand the five aggregates as suffering, then it is called First Noble Truth. So when we understand the First Noble Truth, so we have the Sakkaya, self-identification view. When we understand the First Noble Truth, self-identification views or the Sakkaya will disappear. Then the Second Noble Truth, the cause behind the suffering is the craving. So when we understand the craving, that means because of craving, the suffering appears. So when we understand the Second Noble Truth, so if we have the views of nihilism will appear, because we know how the world appeared. And when we understand the Third Noble Truth, so we think the eternalism, sasataditi, because we know every things which is appear is getting disappear because of the appearing and disappearing. So the eternalism, if we have the view of eternalism, that views disappear. And when we understand the Magga Satya, or the Fourth Noble Truth, so we may have in the Buddha's time also, there are three views, like ahetuka, mean everything happened automatically. There was no person of doing things like that. They were having three views, basically ahetuka and akiriyavadi. So these kind of views also disappearing because of the understanding of the Magga Satya, fourth one. Because once we understand the Four Noble Truths in the first level as Satyajnana and the beginning, so we get the road, that we get the path that if you want to become complete liberation from all kind of suffering, we need to practice Sila. Then by practicing Sila, we become in a state of Samadhi. So then after completion of the Samadhi, we get the Panya, and then we can completely liberate from the suffering. So we can we will get that knowledge once we understand the Four Noble Truths. So then only we can go to this Sallekha Pariyaya. After that only we can, there are, Buddha said, there are 5 Sallekha, Chittuppada, Parikkamana, Paribhava, and Paranibbana. And when we, once people having this kind of first understanding or the right view, then if he tries to practice those 44 factors, it is very lengthy. So I'm not going to talk about those factors. Venerable Bhante's already explained some of them. And those, if one just after understanding, if one thinks to follow the 45 factors, it is a kind of a bahukarang vadami, chittuppada bahukarang vadami. Suppose as first one, the people are very cruel, and I'm trying to be kindness towards the animals, towards the old beings. If one thinks with that view, it's a bahukara. I mean, it's greatly helpful for him to achieve the enlightenment. That mindset will definitely rubbing off the defilements which is deposited in our minds. So in that way, we can discuss about 44 factors. I think the other monks also enlighten us with some, their ideas by presenting their ideas. So that's what I want to add, Bhante, for the time being.
Thank you, Bhante Pesala, for digging the commentary of the sutra and also saying where we should stand in order to understand the 44 mental purities that are described in the sutra. So I see that you also agree with the idea of translating the title of the sutra in a way that implies the meaning of rubbing off. So it says in the first one that we rub off cruelty, and then that gives us an opening to eradicate or remove defilements. So how does that process happen? I think at least by understanding one, we may be able to understand all 44. And I like to hear from Bhante Jayasara in this regard.
Okay, it's been good to hear the Venerables speak on the sutta, because this is not a sutta that I have examined in great detail, and also to hear about the different ways of understanding the name. I'm a very kind of like practical person when I read a sutta, and especially a sutta where the Buddha is giving a direct, like, this is how you should train, right? There's wonderful suttas, this is how you should train. And this is one of those suttas where the Buddha is saying, okay, you know, if you want to practice self-effacement, then, you know, you judge, you look at these things and you say, do I match this yet? Right? Am I one of those who will not be angry here or not? And so I in looking at the definition, I guess in the Pali English dictionary, one of the definitions that connected with me was slowly grinding away. And so it's like, this reminds me of, in my own experience, in my own practice, what I've noticed is it's like a slowly grinding away of the defilements day by day. You know, actually, I had the, especially in relation to anatta, one of the insights that I had was, it's like there's a huge iceberg and you're just taking a little ice pick and you're chipping away at the iceberg every day. And eventually, what's in the iceberg? There's nothing. It's empty. But it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of practice. And so this is one of those suttas with these 44 that you can look and you can see, am I one of these? Like, does this match me? And what this brings up to my mind is actually one of my favorite lines in the Dhammapada, where the Buddha is talking about, you know, happy we are, though, you know, free from affliction among those who are afflicted. Right? Happy we are, free of anger among those who are full of anger. You know, I love Bhante Buddharakkhita's translation of that. Feeders on joy we shall be, like the radiant gods. It's so beautiful. And so when I see these lines, it's like, okay, this is what I'm working for. Right? And obviously, even among these 44 is the eightfold path. So are you one who has right speech, right action, right livelihood, etc.? And obviously, if you are, then you are grinding away at your ignorance, you're grinding away at your defilements, you're grinding away at the identity view, all of these things, slowly grinding away. And so that's really kind of what I get out of the sutta. It's like a guidepost, you know, to look at. So one of those guideposts is, you know, with metta, like the another version where I would say, like, as a guidepost, is the Kakachupama Sutta, right? Where every once in a while, I think at the end of the am I to the point yet where I could be, you know, sawn limb from limb and have no anger or aversion yet? And I was like, probably not. No, I'm not there yet. Right? But it's something that I'm working towards, something that I'm trying to develop day by day. And so then you said, you know, speaking about how to focus and work on one. And I think that, you know, one of the things about Buddhism is that there's lots of lists and there's lots of numbers of things. It's like, okay, practice this Noble Eightfold Path. And then the average new person is like, oh, where do I start? Do I practice one day and then the other the next day, and all these things? And so I guess sometimes it's helpful to focus on just one. But with the understanding that this is all, like, this is a whole practice, right? All of these things go together, right? And if you are practicing one, so like if one of them is like, we shall practice right mindfulness. Well, if you're practicing right mindfulness, then you're probably going to also follow a bunch of those other ones as well, because when you're mindful, then you're aware of what is the right thing to do and how to act skillfully. So I guess that's pretty much all that comes to mind for me at this point.
Thank you, Bhante Jai sir. I like the practical approach that you presented to us, grinding away, and it is really true and meaningful as we understand this sutra. And so it also helps us see that although we see 44 here, and these are things that we already know, the Eightfold Path, 5 hindrances, 10 unwholesome deeds. So these, when we view them in the society, we see that others can be killers, and I'm not going to kill. Others can be cruel, and I'm not going to be cruel, which means I'll be practicing loving kindness. So, and when we also understand the first few passages of the sutra, it says that the four jhanas and 4 attainments are not Sallekha. So does it say, because someone in the audience might think that maybe jhanas are not necessary, jhanas or attainments are not necessary. So if someone comes to that understanding, I believe that is perhaps wrong way to understand the sutra. It says that you are not stopping there. You have more to do, because your defilements may be in a dormant state, that they may not arise strongly in you. So you don't see the defilement. It's like when you look at the 5 hindrances, they arise when jhanas are not present, and when they have been buried and you don't see any of the defilements, when any of the 5 hindrances in you, you may be in a jhana. But jhanas are to be taken as perhaps as a foundation, but not the end of your practice. So that, I think, should be clear to everyone in our audience. So with that, I see Venerable Tesla has raised his hand, and over to you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante. Again, I want to add something, Bhante. As you said, actually, we may get a wrong understanding that there is no requirement of jhana. Actually, that is a wrong view, Bhante. Here, the Sutta said, according to my understanding, Bhante, before, we suppose we just forget about the, the Noble Eightfold Path. Just suppose we are going on a path to some destination. Actually, before we go, we must know the destination and the path, the way of transport, everything we must know. Before put our first step, we must know, we must be aware of the path and the destination. Otherwise, then if we know the, from the beginning at the end of the path, if we know the path, then we can choose whatever. If I want to hire a helicopter, I can hire a helicopter because I know the destination. And if I want to use the vehicle, I use the normal vehicle, like going through the road. Likewise, if I want to go through the sea, I can choose that path also. Because if I know the from the beginning to the end, everything, if I know, then I can choose the path. So similarly, if we understand the basic of the about the 5 aggregates and the vipassana side, anicca dukkha anatta, Four Noble Truths, then by having that understanding, then if we can produce jhana, that will be, it's like it's very easy for us to reach the nibbana. So that's why the most important thing is to understand the basics. When we understand, we know how to how to go through the path. That even without understanding, if we practice those 45 factors, that it says that we are having sila. That means if we have the complete Sila, that means it automatically it will brings us the Samadhi. You know, the Samadhi that we are getting without the basement of Sila, it will remains only when we are doing meditations, we can be happy at that time. But once we getting out from the meditation and doing other things, then that Samadhi will fade away. But if you have the basement of the Sila, that Sila will know, it will not, today I am observing Sila and tomorrow I will breaking. So if that kind of Sila is having with us, the same Samadhi will having with us, because when we are having the Sila, we have the Samadhi, and when we don't have the Sila, then again the Samadhi will fade away. So, but you know, with that understanding, right understanding, if we practice Sila and if we do any kind of jhana, then we can easily guide ourselves to the Nibbana. That's what I want to add more, Bhante. Thank you for providing me the opportunity.
So thank you, Venerable Pesala, for that. So consistency is key, that it's not something that you do for today and then you don't do it tomorrow. It's something we do regularly so that you achieve the required results. So with that, I like to also open the stage for Venerable Ananda, who raised hand to speak.
Bhante, I also wanted to add a point that I just remembered. If we look at the core of Buddha's teaching, that we find that it revolves around right view, mostly around the wrong view. So in Tripitaka discourse, the Pali Canon, we see a lot of wrong views. Like in Brahmajala Sutta, there are 62 wrong views. And our natural inclination is to believe in something or reject something. So we either believe on a fact or we reject the fact. That's the very nature of human mind. And when we do that, usually how we move on from one view to the other is by grasping another view. So we are in a particular view, and then we leave that, we think that we detach that, and then we go and get into another understanding or another conclusion, basically. So call it view, call it paradigm, call it conclusion. End of the day, we are going to think that this is the view that I have about myself, about the world. Now, what is world, what is myself is a deeper discussion. But what I wanted to mention is that there are suttas that I find sometimes, suppose I will put it in a small allegory, that I have two walls. So if I'm going towards one wall, Buddha would say, this is not the direction, go the other way. And now by these walls, I'm telling that these are the conclusions that we can get into. So I'm going towards one wall, Buddha says, don't go there, go the other way. So then I'm going towards the other wall, and Buddha says, this is not the correct way, go towards the other wall. So sometimes it gives a confusion which one is the right one. Now, why I said that is that if you look at some of the sutras in this section of, I can't remember exactly, I can remember one sutta called the Gavi Upama Sutra, where Buddha praises attaining jhanas. And then in the whole Vagga, Buddha says that, doing the jhana practice is a good thing. He praises it. And on the other hand, you find other sutras like Sallekha Sutta and another sutta like Attakanagra Sutra, where Buddha says just getting your jhana and getting stuck there is not the correct way. You need to get out of that and then do your own vipassana. So I think it's a fantastic message. If we only read one sutta, it might be hard to understand the full, the complete message that Buddha is trying to give, the middle way. So we might go and get into a particular frame of mind and think this is the right view. Whereas if we look into a few other sutras which are completely contrasting, we would find that it's not neither this nor that. So it's something neither this nor that. So I just wanted to add that message as well.
So thank you, Venerable Ananda, for that wonderful input for this discussion. Neither this nor that. So it's kind of keeping us in an open space where we can explore many opportunities and options. Thank you. So Venerable Bhante Jayasara would like to also share some words of them. Thank you.
I appreciate Venerable Ananda's words. My words are going to basically be in line with those. So the way I kind of view the the jhanas and the Buddha, I kind of view the Bodhisattva, right? So before he's the Buddha and he's learning from Alara, Kalama and all the teachers, and he's gaining the Arupa attainment or the jhanas and all these things. And I'm told, I hear that one who's mastered these can go into a blissful state for 7 days, right? And so my thoughts was like, I had this like thought or image of the Buddha doing this and coming out after 7 days and like, dukkha's still there. This is not the way, right? So, but what's important, if you read the suttas, as Venerable Ananda was saying, you have to kind of have a broader understanding. Then you understand that, yes, jhana is actually very important. But it's important for a specific reason, right? It's especially the fourth jhana is the best platform for seeing things as they are, right? This was something that I remember doing a jhana retreat with Bhante Gunaratana when I was still a layperson. He really hammered this home, right? The fourth jhana, and it makes sense. What's in the fourth jhana? No pleasure and pain. No likes and dislikes, right? All of these have been subdued and your mind is free of all these clouding things. And then that's where you set the mind towards seeing the three characteristics of existence, developing a mind of vipassana, right? So jhana should be seen as that platform to be able to see things as they are. And I think that's, where when the Buddha talks about samatha and vipassana, right? These two mind states, right? That's what this is. They go together. They for awakening, they work together. They support each other. They develop each other. I was like, I'm not really that great of a samatha samadhi practitioner, right? I've always had struggles with sitting meditation and following the breath, but I'm pretty strong satipatthana practitioner. But through practicing lots of satipatthana, I've also developed samatha, which was a surprise to me at first. It's like, oh, this is happening. And then I read in the suttas, the Buddha says exactly that. And it's like, oh, okay. Right? Whether one might be inclined towards one or the other, but as you go down the path, they converge, right? Somebody who might be a strong vipassana practitioner will also develop some level of samatha. So these things are important, and jhana is very important. I hear before my time, or at least when I was very young, there was this phase where Dhamma teachers really kind of, like, this is like 1970s and stuff like that. They said jhana's useless, don't do jhanas, just do vipassana. And then, you have people like Bhante Gunaratana and others who come and say, who are very sutta based and say, no, jhana is very important. This is, you read the suttas and you can see how often the Buddha talks about the jhanas, but they are not the end all in and of themselves. They're a vehicle to be able to see things as they are. So they're a vehicle for developing insight. That's what I would say in terms of what the right mindset one should have when developing jhanas.
That's very important that Bhante Jayasara mentioned about the importance of jhanas and also seeing that what worked for him. So I think I have heard in other occasions that 50% of meditation is coming to the cushion, and the other 50, I think, involves choosing one practice that works for you and being consistent about that practice until you gain the result. Sometimes you don't have to know all the sutras, of course, to practice something that you understand. And when you know one sutra and you start practicing it, and you will see soon that you can arrive at the required results. And like Bhante Jayasara mentioned, you start somewhere and then you realize, oh yeah, the Buddha has stated about the practice that works exactly that way as well. It doesn't have to be this way or that way. You just need to start from somewhere and then see that you arrive or you achieve these results. And one person from the audience says, just like there are many roads that lead to Rome, many roads to Sripada mountain, Buddha's teachings also show the many facets of his Dhamma, and that is the beauty of the Dhamma. It's appealing to many, all walks of life, and that is how I understand the teachings of the Buddha teaching. But the ultimate goal is the same, the Nibbana. Bhavana is the tool to calm and purify the mind. A cluttered, confused, and impure mind cannot see anything clearly. So to her understanding, even those hermits who lived before the Buddha's time did the meditation but never became enlightened. Some never became enlightened. However, when the Buddha started teaching Dhamma, and they became enlightened through practicing. She says Vipassana, but then also Samatha, right? They are like the two sides of the same coin. So that was wonderful. Thank you for that comment. And I think we have come to the conclusion of the sutra. And I will invite Venerable Bhante Santa Sobana to do the Ovada Patimokkha if you like.
Kanti paramang tapo titikka nibbanang paramang vadanti buddha nahi pabbajito paropagati samano hoti parang vihetayantu sabba papas akaranang කුසලස්ස උපසම්පදා සචිත්ත පරියෝදපනං ඒතං බුද්ධාන ශාසනං අනුපවාදෝ අනුපගාතෝ පාතිමොක්කේච සංවරෝ මත් තං යුතං ච බත්තස්මින් අන්තං ච සයනාසනං අධිචිත්තේ ච ආයෝගෝ ඒතං බුද්ධාන ශාසනං සාදු සාදු සාදු.
Thank you, Bhante Santa Sobana, for beautifully chanting the Ovada Patimokkha. So we have had another wonderful discussion today, the 50th one, and let us wish a happy stay in Bangladesh to Venerable Bhante Sannapala, and see you in 2 weeks. Thank you very much.